What's going on, gang? Thanks for tuning back into the channel. So summertime is quickly approaching here in North Texas, and that means one of two things. Either I stop camping or I find a way to try to keep cool when it's 105 up to 110 degrees here in North Texas during June, July, August, even September. You know, I've tried everything from the 5,000 BTU window AC units. I've tried the Zero Breeze Mark II, the Ecoflow WAVE 2. And to be completely honest and open with you, the best solution that I found throughout 2.5, almost 3 years of truck camping in the South is a $200 5,000 BTU window air conditioning unit when I was camping with a truck shell. I was able to build a false tailgate. It just worked well. However, there's drawbacks to that. You have to have some type of power, so that means a lot of battery juice or some type of way to plug in that window AC unit. So it worked great, it cooled, it used a lot of power though, or a lot of batteries depending on where I was at. So now that I'm doing a little bit different style of camping with the rooftop tent, a window AC unit doesn't make sense. You can't use a window AC unit really in a rooftop tent. So you're kind of left with these portable units. Now, I did not know, honestly, Ecoflow was gonna be sending this to me, which they did send this to me. This is the Ecoflow WAVE 3. Now, this video is probably going to be fairly long in the tooth because I know nothing about the WAVE 3. I have no idea what the upgrades are between the WAVE 2. They didn't tell me. I'm going to have to go through the brochure and literature to try to figure out what the differences are between the WAVE 2 and this WAVE 3. This is the WAVE 3 extra battery, which I have one for the WAVE 2, and I was really hoping it was going to be a little bit smaller. But it appears to be kind of the same size, the same way that you attach it to the actual main unit. Let me tell you exactly how big this battery is. It is a 1024 watt hour, 20 amp hour battery at 51.2 volts. It's LiPo 4, so not lithium ion, that's good. Basically the same as the WAVE 2. I don't know all the ways you can charge it up. I'm assuming you can use solar. However, it did come with this 12 volt to XT60i connection, and I just plugged this into my Goal Zero sitting right behind here, and I let it charge up overnight. I only input around 105 watts using the supplied cable, and it does have this connection cable that's going to go from the extra battery to the WAVE 3 unit itself, which is really nice, really flush, doesn't stick out anywhere. So that same thing as the WAVE 2 though. So again, everything kind of looks the same. Even the pictures on the box look the same as the WAVE 2. I'm just gonna get this thing unboxed, guys. We're gonna kind of go through this step by step. You're gonna learn with me, see how this thing works. We'll do a few tests. All right, so inventory check. We have the new WAVE 3 unit here. Honestly, it looks almost the exact same as the WAVE 2. The actual finish might be a little bit rougher, a little more matte than the WAVE 2 unit, but you know, it got the same louvers. It looks like you have the same exhaust and intake ports, pretty much the same screen. One thing, do not forget, save this. This comes in the package, and you might think it's just cardboard, but this is actually a template to use for your ducting. So speaking of ducting, it comes with 3 of these clip-on duct adapters that are going to go kind of all over this unit in order to use this ducting. Which, one of the things about these Ecoflows is they use really, really large ducting. I believe that's a 6-inch duct. I think that's a 4-inch duct or a 5-inch duct, so pretty fat ducting. Then you've got your condensation drain line and then your power cable, quick start guide. I'm gonna let this thing sit for a couple hours because there is a compressor in it, and it did arrive at my door sideways, so I don't want to turn this thing on yet without letting that compressor kind of settle down. So this thing has been sitting now for about three hours or so, and you know, in real world, this thing is going to be in the back of a camper or an RV or whatnot, and it is going to be getting jostled around. So I don't want to let this thing sit for 24 hours because that's not how this thing is really going to be used. But I did go ahead and install these covers on all these vents. There's one in the back, up here on the front. The only thing that I wish that they actually gave us, and I think you can get them on Etsy, but this is the front intake. So this is what's going to be sucking in air from wherever this is going to be conditioning, okay? So there's no way to actually route a tube to the front of this unless you get some kind of special adapter. And I wish it came with one, but it doesn't. So I do have this sitting on the battery. However, I do not have the battery connected. Here's the battery cable because I want to use this watt meter, and I've got everything cleared out You can see here it's everything zeroed out. Kilowatts, the running 120 volts. But the main thing I want to look at is the high. So this is going to keep track of the highest amount of wattage this thing's going to pull on startup, because that's really what I want to know the most. So it comes with this power cable, so I'm going to get it plugged into the side. And just quick reading, this unit, the Wave 3, claims it's got 6,100 BTU, where I believe that the Wave 2 is around 5,100 or 5,200 BTU. I could be wrong, but I believe that this Wave 3, the 6,100 BTUs, is a little more than the Wave 2. So let's get this thing plugged up and get this unit powered on. I'm going to press and hold the power button. There we go. Okay, so the lowest it can go is 60 degrees. You can see that blue LED light, just like the Wave 2, starts to go back and forth, indicating that it is in power mode or air conditioning mode. Let's turn this fan all the way up. And let's see what we're doing in terms of power. So right now we are pulling 245 watts. 250, and that's going to continue to go up. So I'm going to let this thing run just a little bit, and then we'll try to get somewhat of an accurate air output measurement to make sure this thing is actually outputting cold air. This is going to be the exhaust. This is pushing out hot air, so if you have this in an RV, you're going to have to use this particular hose, clamp it on or screw it onto this adapter, and then route this hose out of what you're trying to air condition. Otherwise, you're just going to be backfeeding in hot air, and that's not going to be good. But it is quiet. That compressor is running. My microphone's right here, and I do have the drain hose plugged in. So the drain hose just simply is a press fit to a fitting in the back of this unit, and you're going to want to put this in a bucket or drain it outside if you're in an RV or a little mini camper, just to make sure that you don't flood yourself out. Now, I'll have to come back and let you guys know, on the Wave 2, I believe this had a self-evaporating feature to where if you were below 70% humidity, you didn't actually have to use a drain hose. The system would actually evaporate that condensation itself, splash it back up onto the coils, and you didn't have to worry about drainage. But if you're in a really high humid environment, you're going to have to use this drainage hose. So that's showing 65.5 air output. The exhaust is pumping out 105 degree heat. So again, make sure this is going far away from wherever you're trying to air condition. But yeah, I mean, it's working. It does sound a little bit quieter than the Wave 2. I don't know if that's one of the upgrades to this Wave 3, but it doesn't have a real kind of weird scratchy hissy sound that my Wave 2 had, and that feels like it's getting even cooler now. Yep, so we're at 63 degrees now. But I mean, you can test this thing all day, but the real test is actually putting this inside an RV, a small RV. These aren't meant to cool down a giant RV, guys. This is meant for probably less than around 300 to 400 square feet worth of space to actually make a big difference. And, you know, of course, in a rooftop tent or a tiny micro camper, this thing would be perfect, but not for a big RV. Don't get this thinking it's going to cool that down. But it for sure, see, we're at 59.9 degrees now, so it is dropping down. Let's see what the highest, okay, so the highest that this unit has pulled so far is 511 watts. That means you could probably run this with a pretty small 1,000 watt inverter hooked up to however many batteries. If you're going to run this completely off grid, you don't have to have a giant inverter to power this. And of course, you do have this battery down here, and we're going to test that out to see how we can charge it. I'm hoping you can charge it up via solar, because that truly would make this somewhat off-grid capable if you don't have to use some type of AC charging grid to charge this battery up. 511 watts on max setting at the coldest, highest fan setting that I can put this unit on right now, and we are currently pulling 482 watts. Okay guys, so now we are currently pulling 520 watts So that means that the highest that this machine has seen is going to creep up to 525 watts. So it's not 511 watts for the high. Right now it's 525 watts for the high. So it's working. It's pumping out cold air. Where's my thermometer? 56 degrees. And that feels good. Now, of course, this thing is also a heat pump. So you can reverse operation this entire thing for the wintertime, and you can put up to around 6,100 BTUs worth of heat. And it seems to be working fine, but I've still got a lot more, 55.6 running right now. But let me get this thing set up over there on the table because it does have an app. I need to make sure the firmware is updated and then show you folks how the app works, because to me personally, the app is a lot more intuitive than this screen on top. I don't really understand what a lot of these buttons mean, but the app is really easy to use. So let me show you folks that. So let's do a few tests on this thing. I do have the actual unit installed on the battery. This battery is completely charged, and to show you that, you're just gonna press and hold this power button for 2 seconds. All 4 of my lights do light up. One thing to note on this battery is you do have a 140 watt USB-C and your standard USB-A that you can use to charge up phones, laptops if you want. I don't recommend doing that. I would like to use all of this battery to actually run this AC unit, but in a bind, you do have a couple of outputs there on the front that you can use. So to actually connect the battery to this Wave 3, you're gonna use this particular connector. And it's really quite simple. There is a sliding door here on the side. You're gonna pull back, and then there is a port there on the battery, and then you're gonna take this and connect them together. Battery first, and then the Wave 3. So this is a real nice connection. There is nothing hardly sticking out the side. You can probably hear that it just was notified that the battery's connected. So I'm gonna get this thing, I'm gonna start a timer. I wanna see how long this battery can run this particular unit on the coldest setting, highest fan speed. And I'm gonna go ahead and start my timer because I can hear it clicking on now. We're gonna start right now while I continue to talk to you. So let me pull up the Ecoflow app. You can see the Ecoflow Wave 3 is connected. My target temp is 60 degrees. My fan is max. And I do have my drain down here in a little bucket to catch all the condensation. So this is gonna, of course, have a lot of variables to this test, mainly the ambient temperature, because this unit is going to detect the ambient temperature and adjust the output accordingly. And right now the ambient temperature is showing 72 degrees, that middle number right there. So if it's 105 degrees outside, this compressor is probably never going to shut down and let the unit breathe for a little bit. So again, take this test for what you will. It's not scientific, but it's going to give me at least a pretty good idea of how long I can run this unit at its coldest setting with the max fan off of a fully charged battery in my garage at 72 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you click this battery gauge right there, it's going to actually give you a runtime to empty, which is showing 3 hours and 12 minutes, 99% battery capacity. So max setting right now in pretty mild conditions, I should get probably around 3 hours worth of air conditioning off of this. So let's check back in after about 3 hours and see how accurate this is. All right, gang, let me jump in here and give you some updates before the system actually shuts itself down. So we have been going for a total of 1 hour, 33 minutes, and 25 seconds. So after an hour and 33 minutes, we are at 37% on the battery. And that's gonna be hard to show up. And that's probably gonna be hard to see without the glare right there. So we're probably gonna get between 2 and 2.5 hours. And just walking in front of this, I can feel the cold. I did put a thermometer here in front of the output, and check this out, 51 degrees. That bottom number right there, that is the output of this air. So it is pushing out some extremely cold air. I have it set for 60 degrees. Now, of course, ambient temperature has a lot to do with that. And ambient temperature, in fact, in this garage is 73 degrees. Right there. So this is a really nice spring day when you probably actually wouldn't even need an air conditioning unit, but it is pushing out cold air. Now, one thing I also have noticed is that it's very quiet. So again, this is on the coldest it can get, the max fan. I'm gonna put this decibel meter up. I'm gonna shut up. let you guys see it. I'm going to hold it right there, 61.3, with this right next to the unit. So it is a very, very quiet unit for an AC compared to my window air conditioning unit that I used to use in my truck. It probably got up to 80, 82 decibels. It was loud, I couldn't talk over it. I'm talking normal right now, and I am standing literally right behind it. So it is a very quiet unit. Well, in an effort to not miss this on camera, we are at 2 hours and 21 minutes. Going strong right now, and the Ecoflow is telling me that I've got 5% battery left with 6 minutes remaining down there at the bottom. So I'm not going to call it here, but I'm going to say since we've been going for 2 hours and 21 minutes, I can guesstimate that I'm going to get around 2 hours and 30 minutes based off of these current conditions running this unit at the coldest setting at the highest fan speed. So 2 hours and 30 minutes, that's, you know, that's not that great, but it's only a 1024 watt hour battery. So once this completely dies, I'm gonna use this Delta 3 to charge up this Wave 3 off of the AC inverter, because I wanna see how much wattage this unit can take off of an AC power source, so you can kind of judge if you're gonna bring a small gas or propane generator with you to camp, what size generator you would need to charge up this battery. Now this battery can accept AC charging and solar charging at the same time. So you're gonna plug in your AC charging cord to that Wave 3 unit itself. And then if you're gonna charge up the battery via solar, you have to get one of these. And Ecoflow does not supply it, but it's a standard MC4 to XT60i cable. That is the most important thing to know. Use an XT60i, because if you do not, you will not be able to accept the full amount of solar that this thing can handle, which is 200 watts, 13 amps, 11 to 60 volts. But I got this little pigtail off of Amazon for like 11 bucks. Ecoflow sells them for around 30. So make sure that you get the XT60i and not the regular XT60 yellow, because you will not be able to get full solar. You can double dip, you can do both. You can charge via AC and solar for a max input of 1000 watts to charge up this battery. But as a side note, one of the minor things I like about this Delta 3 is the fact that they were smart enough to kind of articulate these outlets in different manners, because normally I couldn't fit this plug in this bottom one because of this right here, but I can turn it sideways and it fits just fine. So good job Ecoflow on that design. Now this thing is still going, so I'm gonna let it completely die, then we're gonna plug this up. Now I don't actually want to I don't want to run this unit, I just want to charge the battery. And right now we're at 300, 400, 500, 535 watts being input into the Wave 3 battery. So you can see here right now, almost 550 watts coming out of the Delta 3 and simply just plugged into the side of the Wave 3 right here. I do have the battery connected so it can take that inverter juice from the Wave 3 and input it into the battery. But the actual Wave 3 unit is not on, we are not running, we are just simply charging the battery now. It is blinking that first orange LED. All right, well, we've kind of settled down now to around 780 watts. So that's gonna be your 800 watts max of AC plus your 200 watts of solar that you can input, which is gonna give you the 1000 watt input max on this unit. One of the biggest differences that I've noticed through experience of having the older Mark II is that the new Mark III does push out, or it feels like it pushes out more air in terms of velocity. But I've got a wind meter here. We're gonna test to see exactly how much air this pushes out, and we're gonna compare it to the Zero Breeze Mark III here. So I do have both of these units on their max setting, highest fan speed that we can get. And if that's coming through with the glare, I'm getting about 10.3, 10.5, let's say on average, 10 miles per hour worth of air coming out. I will say the Zero Breeze does have a smaller front portion, so it does seem to kind of compress the air a little bit more, probably resulting in higher fan speed. Yep, there you go. So you're looking at almost 16 miles per hour, 15.5, let's say about 15.5 miles per hour coming out of the Zero Breeze. All right, guys, I don't really want to make this video any longer than it already has become, but between the Mark II and the Mark III, I don't even think you can buy the Mark II unit anymore. At least I don't see it on Ecoflow's website, but I will say this is definitely a much better upgrade than the Mark II. It's much more quiet. I don't hear all the weird compressor noises on this one than I did on my Mark II. I like the exterior finish. It doesn't scratch as easily. The hoses are a lot better. So on the Mark II, you got just some really, really poor plastic hoses. But the new hoses that they come with are insulated hoses, much, much better hoses than came with the Mark II. Pump feature on the drain is very, very much appreciated. There was some known issues with the Mark II unit in terms of trying to evacuate that condensation, so this is a much better design than the Mark II. The 6100 BTUs. This is, as far as I know, the strongest AC unit that you can get, portable-wise. So, but the difference between 6100 BTU and 5200 BTU, like on my Zero Breeze, is a little bit. It's not going to make a huge night and day difference, but in terms of specs, this is the strongest AC unit currently out on the market. Lithium iron phosphate batteries is a good thing. The Zero Breeze is lithium ion batteries. It's, you know, it's a pro and con type thing. Lithium ion's lighter. LiPo 4, you're going to get way more charge cycles. But don't let that fool you guys, because you're never going to get to 4,000 cycles on this. This machine's going to break down, or Ecoflow is going to come out with a WAVE 4. So, you know, I wouldn't really care about the life cycle count on the batteries, but lithium iron phosphate is a safer chemistry than lithium ion. Now, one of the things that I've already bought for this unit, and I got them on Etsy, because these are big hoses. It's hard to manipulate these big size hoses through a tent. But luckily, this is the exact same size as the Mark II. And there's a lot of guys on Etsy that are 3D printing things. And I got some adapters that take it down to a 4-inch hose. So I can go use standard 4-inch dryer hoses instead of the nice hoses that Ecoflow comes with, and use 4-inch dryer ducts. Yes, that might hurt the efficiency a little bit, because you're not going to be getting as good of airflow through this unit, a 4-inch hose versus an almost 5.5-inch hose. But those dryer ducts are way easier to manipulate and route how you need them to go than these big, huge hoses. So the good thing is there's a lot of aftermarket parts for the WAVE 3, because again, everything, it's the exact same footprint as the WAVE 2. So anything that you can buy for the WAVE 2, you can pretty much use on the WAVE 3. And I've got adapters on every single exhaust port. I've got the bigger adapter here on the back, same as on the front. And just so you know, this big front element here, this came off of my WAVE 2. It only comes with one that I have on the back, so I went to my WAVE 2 unit, pulled this off, this piece right here. Just my point exactly, that the WAVE 2 stuff does fit perfectly on the WAVE 3. So guys, this is just kind of initial impression of this unit. Obviously, it's a much better upgrade than the WAVE 2. I need to put it in real life use here in Texas, in the South, in my camper, to see exactly how well it cools down. So I'm not going to say this is going to do great, because I don't know that yet, but I want to give you accurate information. So stick around on the channel, and this will be used here in the summer when it gets insanely hot. So that's all I've got to say on the WAVE 3 unit. So far, I seem pretty happy with it. It just feels like a better unit than the Mark II. So guys, thanks for watching. Hope that answered a few questions. If you have any more questions that I didn't cover, leave a comment down below and I'll try to get to it. But until next time, guys, see you soon.